data privacy, cyber warfare, dyslexia, learning accommodations, and lots more today on the K-12 Engineering Education Podcast. I'm Pius Wong. My guest this episode is Nicole Bashang, a cybersecurity professional in Texas. Nicole gives her candid thoughts on hot issues in cybersecurity today, and she also talks about her own educational path as a woman in tech and someone with learning disabilities.
My name's Nicole Bashang. I am a cybersecurity expert. I have a bachelor's in computer information systems and a master's in information systems security from the University of Houston. I currently work as a security analyst for ENGIE North America. ENGIE is one of the global leaders in renewable energy. I also am the chair of the board of directors of WISA-CUH, which stands for Women in Cybersecurity. So it's one of the only cybersecurity clubs at University of Houston right now, and we do a lot of awareness work, and our mission is to help eliminate the gender gap in cybersecurity. So we provide different kind of workshops and speaking events, and we partner with other groups to have conferences and cybersecurity events, and we create a community. So it's really exciting work. And I also volunteer with HughSecCon.
What's that?
It's the Houston Security Conference.
Okay.
So it's in its 9th year. And so I'm also on the planning committee with that. And I help volunteers and getting students from different universities to volunteer. And I used to do that when I was a student, and it's really rewarding. So now I'm also helping with the planning of it. So I'm excited.
Wow, that's cool. You do a ton of stuff that I didn't know about. So that's awesome. What is cybersecurity, first of all, for people listening who might not know what that is?
Okay, so cybersecurity, it's beyond just IT security, so information technology. There's so many different words to explain it, but when you talk about cyber, it's everything that is related to the internet or is computerized. And with securing those systems is making sure that you keep to the three main tenets, and which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Okay.
And making sure those systems, those tools, that data stays secure, stays confidential. Only the people who are allowed to see it sees it. It is what it is. So the integrity, it's not altered. It is what it's supposed to be. And then it's available to those who need to access it when they need to access it. And one of the biggest things we get taught early on is a secure system. It's a system that does exactly what it's supposed to do and nothing else. Because what happens in security is that there's vulnerabilities and you find these exploits, and that's where hackers and people who have malintent can really do a lot of harm. So we're securing computers, but it's beyond that. It's the Internet of Things. It touches everywhere where cyber integrates with our life. Okay. And so it's being cyber aware, which is beyond computer literacy and understanding your actions on the web and your actions on these computers and how they really can affect your life and how people can really screw up those things and cause you a lot of headaches. And
I can imagine. There's lots of
even
stories.
Loss of life. Yeah.
What would you say would be the big draw to you in this field? Why were you studying it?
I have a very interesting history of how I came here, because before I went into computers. I did theater. I was a theater stage manager in New York, not making any money, and realized I wanted to be able to pay my bills. And I was like, okay.
So money is an issue.
Well, that's one of the, you can make good money in cyber. That is definitely a part of it. But for me, I went into technology first, so computer information systems. But then they had all of these tracks. They had database, they had programming, they had networking. But what was really great about security is that it took all of them together and it added an additional challenge. So I always seek that challenge. And then also for the type of human being I am, I want to give back to society. I want to help society. And I really believe cybersecurity is a way to do that. even teaching someone to think before they click on a link in an email, and start to think, okay, maybe this is a phishing email, or start becoming aware of what risk and ways to solve these problems before they become nightmares. It's a way that we can help society, and we can fight back, and we can protect people in a new way, because more and more cyber is going to be integrated into our lives. And more that can create vulnerabilities. And until humans change, and there's not going to be people like trying to steal things, and
when we're perfect people.
Yeah, when our civilization
world.
is perfect and there's no more crime, that's when we will no longer have to secure ourselves.
Yeah.
But even then, security is even quality and making sure that the system doesn't malfunction. It's not just like, okay, there's exploits. It's also people making mistakes. Really, in cybersecurity, people are our weakest link. And so that's why awareness campaigns are very important, because it is the person, like the number one way hackers really start campaigns and they get into systems is phishing emails, clicking links, downloading attachments. You really want to be aware of that. You want to know other ways to get to those sites, and you have to teach people to think before just clicking something in an email, because that could lead to you ending up giving them your information, or them downloading a malicious package, which then will take all of your information. You know, there's so many things out there. But so for me, it's a way that I feel I can still give it back. And it's an exciting field too. It's a lot of fun. It's interesting. And it's always changing. You're always having to be on your toes. So that's one reason I was pulled to it, I guess, to answer your question.
No, that's cool. And like you mentioned that you were doing theater before. So in my head, my immediate question was, I wonder what the similarities and differences are. Besides the money, you said that you like to connect with people or help people. And I imagine theater sort of has that same
with
feeling.
Theater, like that's one thing I like to do. Why I like QSecCon and all of the work I do with WESA's UH, I still get to kind of like stretch those muscles I got from stage management, like whenever you're like running a conference and things like that. But I still appreciate art. And part of what I get to do with awareness campaigns, and I like about it, is I still get to stretch my creative muscles. There are still ways you can be creative in technology. Like I said before, like I really was a person, or I am a person who wants to like bring positive change to the world. See, this conversation can go so many ways.
Yeah. That's fine. No, I'm actually interested in all the different things that could go wrong, just because my mind is like that. But
for me, and one of the ways that I know that this relates to engineering, across the globe, cyber warfare is a new landscape. And it's been there, but it's definitely been growing. And really, there was Stuxnet, which is this like major worm in industrial control systems that
I know a little bit about that.
They don't admit to it, but like it was like the U.S. and Israel kind of, and it was like really the start of like the first time we really saw cyber warfare, and then it got out of control and it spread across the globe.
Really? Oh, I didn't know this.
There's a great documentary that talks about this. It's called 0 Days.
Okay, I'll look
it's really great. It talks about it all. But it was made to target like nuclear systems, but then it spread, and it spread throughout the U.S. and too, like it spread across the globe, and so people were finding it in their systems across, and the U.S. wasn't saying anything because it was very secretive.
Weird, yeah.
They still don't, like, no officials will talk about this. So a lot of what protection is required to protect our systems is done at the commercial level, in corporations who run these systems, in companies like my own, companies like Schlumberger, Chevron, all of those companies. They have security teams because they're having to secure these systems. And then we saw like there's Russia, and they've really they took it and ran with it. And we've seen like cyber attacks in Ukraine and other parts of the world where it targeted critical infrastructure. It takes out the electricity. There's APTs, which are advanced persistent threats. Sometimes these are major like groups, like companies, like people go to work, they hack, and they like, that's their job.
So you're saying governments and terrorist organizations, for lack of a better word, or little companies.
Yeah, because what we saw, like an example that everybody's very familiar with is the 2016 elections and the DNC hacks, right? So what we saw from like the reports that came out, it was APT 28 and APT 29, which are referred to as Fuzzy Bear and Fancy Bear. And we've seen those are very active APTs, and we also saw one of them like over the summer. There was a lot of reports from the FBI telling people to restart their routers and reset their routers and update their passwords because they were seeing one of those APTs also in a lot of different routers. But with advanced persistent threats, what they'll do is that they'll just sit there and they'll stay there. They will develop backdoors into a system. They'll take data and things, but they'll sit there for years. And so a lot of times they won't be picked up. So like you kind of have to sometimes assume like you're already hacked. And you have to,
deal with
work
it
that way, you know?
Right.
So it's always, you're always responding. You're just always responding, and you're always in different levels of the responding. You might be in the management and the risk management and vulnerability management phases, but you're also always responding. You're always getting phishing emails. You're always getting, and you're always having to keep your employees aware. And you have the employees who report things, but then you have the employees who are still clicking on emails and not reporting emails.
Right.
But with these advanced persistent threats, like we see them, right? And they're their own organizations, but they may be associated with like Russian intelligence and there's jokes about like the NSA being America's APT.
Sure. Right.
So that's how it's being fought. And there's been even reports saying we see this in our industrial control systems and they're sitting there. They maybe have the power to do something, but they don't. They just sit there. They're elevating privileges. They're building in those back doors. They're doing those things, and they're just waiting and they're collecting information. So that's what we're dealing with.
Right.
It's a new form of warfare, and I know there's parts of the world that is still definitely feeling the old ways. But if we one day like something happens and those kind of systems go down, then we have to be able to respond to them. And so for me, that's where cybersecurity, especially industrial control security, is so important. And as we saw, like more and more it's put on the corporations, more and the professionals who are out there securing these systems every day. It's more put on us to do the response, because we saw that even when Stuxnet went rogue and it was affecting our own systems, our own government didn't really tell us anything. And there's all these standards and things, and you have to report up, and they would be reporting to this reporting agency, and they're just like, well, and so sometimes governments are going to be secretive, and so you have to. Corporations and these entities, they have to be able to protect themselves as well in order to protect the public. There's security and then there's privacy. And they're separate, but they're also very related. The more and more we come to realize, okay, no, data is the property of the human being. It's an extension of the human being. It's not an asset of a company. Like, it is still an asset of a company. This is one thing personally.
I want to hear your opinion on this, because this is a big discussion today.
Is because data, your personal data, defines you. It is you in an extent. Online, that's you. so easily you can find people's addresses online. Like there's so much personal information is online and available, and you have to actually like Google yourself and go through the first few pages, and you'll be like, what are all of these sites? Why is this all here? And then you have to go through and opt out of it, and it takes a really long time. They don't make it easy for you. But also there's precedent already set that if a company that promised their people, their customers and people who signed up for their service, they're never going to sell your data. But then that company goes bankrupt. And in the courts, they sell off all their assets. And they consider the data an asset. And so their data still gets sold.
Is there an example? I haven't never heard of that. What, like...
They taught it... I would have to look up the exact example, but I know there was precedent set on that.
So we cannot guarantee. Because for a while,
I wanted to like kind of maybe go down a criminal justice route and maybe help change that. Yeah. But for me, like I said, the more our society continues to integrate with technology, you can kind of unplug nowadays. But like the things that we've learned, like our generation, the millennials, the early millennials, the people who first, like the kids who first grew up with the internet,
right? And
how we used to just put everything online.
MySpace.
All of it. Yeah, Facebook. MySpace.
I had Facebook a Zanga back in the day. Oh, wow. I don't know if you know it. Anyway.
There was so much. Remember My Life and things like
that? I've seen it. I wasn't on that one.
No, but it's just like there was so much.
But that's a good point. There's this idea of voluntarily putting your data and giving it to another entity. How do you feel about that?
Well, I personally have worked so hard to over the last, like I've been off of Facebook for like probably over 5 years now.
I feel like I should say congratulations.
Thank you.
It's hard. I'm not.
It was when I decided. It was such a freeing thing. It really was the like moment I decided to be like, no more Facebook.
Yeah.
I felt free. And then over last year, I then also quit Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat. I personally still miss Snapchat. I'm about to get a new device. I might be back on Snapchat.
It's entertaining sometimes.
It's just like, I know China collects everything. So, and I know Snapchat's partially owned by China. I'm not joking.
Right, okay.
They collect everything. There's, I've heard jokes. It's like, if you lose all your data, just China should... it's just like they have it somewhere. If it goes through their systems, they collect so much data.
For like data mining and
because they have they do a lot of censorship.
Okay.
So they do so much censorship. In order to censor things, you need to know what's out there, so they collect.
The Great Firewall of China, as they say.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
No, but I didn't make that up. Someone else, that's something I read.
That is pretty much it. And I've sometimes thought, because of digital forensics, and I've done a lot of digital forensics so far, especially when I was working on my master's. You come to understand the other forms of threats that are out there, especially to children. It's painful, and it's a hard subject to talk about, and people who work on like child pornography cases, they burn out really quickly because it's painful. Sure. And you see red. You can't help it. And it's like these people harming children in that sense. And like there's so much technology now out there. Like my mind, I'm like, okay, what are we really doing to protect all of those things? And I know China and like that great firewall of China. Like I've thought if there's a way we could even, and I know like the FBI and like even, they're working on finding these people, and they do, and there are good people fighting the good fight out there, and I'm so thankful for them. But I feel like there's probably more we could do as well. And with just the power of the internet and the power of the malware out there, because there's like remote access Trojans, rats that can, if you have one on your computer, they can like be watching you through your Your
that's why
webcam.
Normally I'd put a post-it note on the webcam.
Because without you even knowing. And there's so many things they can do. So it's very disturbing. And then it's
talking to you is like, all right, I got to go home and lock down
I don't
want
to be an alarmist. I really don't. I know. And the great thing is there's a lot of people out there working to protect people and that's what I'm saying. There's so much that needs protecting and securing. There's so many different vectors, there's so many different landscapes, and really the first place you can is at home and understanding those simple steps to protect yourself.
What would a typical day look like for a cybersecurity professional, if you can even say that? Like, what? Because you talked about the big picture. Is it that some people might think you're just sitting there in front of a computer coding or investigating? What does it look like day to day?
So what's beautiful about a cybersecurity professional? There's so much. There's so much. There are so many different types of cybersecurity professionals. That's what's wonderful about cyber, and really, there's still a talent gap. We still need more people in cyber, and it's going to continue to grow. And there's things from risk management. There's things to incident response. For me, a typical day, and my responsibilities are shifting, so that's exciting. But for me, so I work within a SOC in a sense. So that's a security operations center, but I kind of have a little less traditional of a SOC analyst role, given the fact that most SOC analysts, they'll come in, there's a lot of support, you're seeing what tickets come in, what different alerts, so you're monitoring different systems, different IDSs, which are intrusion detection systems, and
these are automated data.
A lot of stuff, like firewalls and different, there's a lot of different systems out there that help us monitor our networks and traffic and find what's going on. So for me, I'll come in, if there's emails about phishing emails, I'll have to investigate this phishing emails. I'll look at the headers, see where they're coming from. Are they really a phishing email? Do they really mean, is this something that's really serious? And then I'm also, so I have to communicate that. We have a group level, so a lot of times you also have to communicate it to other parts of the organization. You have to follow that due diligence. You need to respond to the end user who reported it and be like, okay, did you click a link? And then if they click, you need to respond how you have to respond. Wow. But you also want to reinforce the good behavior and make sure they delete the email. One thing I'm working with right now is automating that whole system from them emailing us the emails. There's a great tool called Nova4 that help with simulated phishing. And so you're able to phish your own company. And it's a little aspect of almost penetration testing, which is also something you can do, which is you're trying to hack your own company. Right. You're trying to find the vulnerabilities and so you can patch those places and strengthen those areas and those weaknesses. So there's so many aspects, but with phishing, then okay, I have about 113 points of failure here. These are the weak points. This is where they're going to click. These are the people I'm going to click. I need to make sure these people know not to click. Yeah. Or, is it like a fire drill for email in a way? In a way, it's a way to test. Yeah. It brings awareness. Yeah. You know where your company stands. But you would have to respond to that email. Make sure you reinforce that. There might be there's other indicators, so there's so many systems we work with. So you're monitoring those systems, seeing if there's anything that needs to be responded to. Yeah. So that's a very typical day. I also do a lot of other things. I've worked on policy. So you might be writing policy, you might be reviewing policy because you want to make sure people are following these policies. You might be working in compliance and making sure these controls are being followed, and you're checking up on controls. You're making sure you're following through on findings of audits. I personally actually like audits. a lot of people are scared of audits.
Yeah, what would go on?
To me, yeah, so like on audit, they come and see if you're doing your job in a way, and you're following controls put in place by governing bodies of the organization. It allows you to see where you can improve. And I believe in continuous improvement.
It's feedback.
Yeah, it's feedback. And I love feedback. But people can sometimes get a little about audits, but it's a part of the process and it's actually beneficial. So you might be working on control management. I work a lot we use a tool called Archer, RSA Archer. And so I've been working on third-party vendor management and the risk management around that. So I do work for a big corporation, and a lot of big corporations, when they are following standards and they have controls in place to make sure that they don't they're mitigating these risks by implementing controls. And so like a control could be having a strong password, like multiple characters, that's a simple security control. Yeah. Making sure that's followed, and there's processes in place that's followed. People reset their passwords, things like that. And so with risk management, we do a lot of like assessments. So we've been building out a solution to manage all of our assessments, get ratings so we can have better visibility. Do we want to continue to work with this client? Do we want to work with them at all? Mm-hmm. Will they provide more risk than it's worth? Do we need to accept this level of risk? Or is this a great partner, a great vendor that we should work with? Also like NERC and internal control. So NERC-CIP is a standard that's very much related to industrial control systems. So
people all around the country use these standards?
Yeah. So it's there's a lot of standards out there. There's NIST. There's so many.
Sure. And
so it really depends on your corporation. And there's ISO, which is more international. Right. There's a lot out there. So I've worked a lot with that. And so you're working with making sure your policy aligns with some of these frameworks and standards. And I also work with people who work on business impact analysis, who work on disaster recovery, who are working on business continuity, who are working on, there's so much. A lot of what I do is related to GRC, which is governance, risk management, and compliance. I wrote my thesis over integrated GRC for drone technology. Mm-hmm. Wow. So, but it's like once you understand the concept, you can apply it to anything. And it's just a way to make sure like you're governing, you're managing your risk, and you're complying with what is going to keep your organization safe.
That's interesting because you got to think about all these different technologies and technical things, but you're tying it always back to this theme of protecting people. Okay.
Yeah, and it's like you're just putting those steps in place to make sure, because we're humans, we make mistakes. That's actually a huge part of
the human part. Is that what you mean? Or?
Well, it's a huge part of security. But yeah, the human part is a human, like I said earlier, they are the weakest link.
We are the weakest link of technology.
We really are. Like it's technology, process, and people really, because we could make a mistake. I saw a headline the other day. One disgruntled employee, he got fired, and he isolated, alienated over 20 servers.
Something like he destroyed. That's what I saw in the headline.
There were cloud servers, and he just was like.
So they're all gone. They're not in the cloud still.
Yeah, so they could do that. So you want to make sure you have.
What's going to
backups.
happen to him? Is he going to be part of the criminal justice system as well, or?
Oh, I'm sure there's So another fun thing about digital forensics, especially on the corporate level, when you're in law enforcement, you have to deal with a lot of other kind of cases. But on the corporate level, you're dealing with you'll run across those other cases, which then you just immediately stop everything you're doing and you call you call 911 and the FBI. But
like child abuse.
If you see anything, any kind of child pornography at all, you stop everything you're doing, call the FBI. Right. And usually if you call 911, local law enforcement doesn't always know what to do. Like you should still call 911. You should call your lawyers, and you should call the FBI. The FBI is going to be the ones who really respond to it, or who know how to properly respond to it most of the time.
Okay. But these other types of like corporate vandalism, we'll say.
Oh, theft of intellectual property, things like that.
There's actual criminal proceedings for this type of thing.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, they will. It's not so much criminal. So there's like civil and criminal.
Yeah.
And a lot of that falls under civil.
Right.
But depending on what you're doing,
sure. Hey, how?
Because if you're like funny, like stealing money. Like that,
extortion.
There's so many levels, right? So, but then on our side, you have to make sure that you have a chain of custody. You need to make sure you have all of these things in place that the case holds up forensically in court. There's a lot of steps on that side as well. There's so much in cybersecurity. It's so much fun.
So on a related note, how do you feel about hackers? Now, there's this idea of hackers doing bad things. And then there's this idea of hackers maybe doing good things, like the idea of Robin Hood, except in the internet age. So you are all about protecting people. How do you feel about these other people outside of the law or outside of the sanctioned, if I can ask you such a question?
Yeah. Okay. The thing is, in a sense, we're all hackers. But
okay, that was very philosophical. The friendship was inside in our hearts all along.
All along.
Right, I'm gonna watch this movie. But so how so?
Okay, so especially if you're a cybersecurity professional, you always have your moments. Some of us go a little further than others, but like you find your ways around
the system, right?
Yeah,
you know
anytime,
more.
Anytime you've been dealing with like a computer system, any system, and you're just like, this system is not working for me. Like, I'm gonna find a way to circumvent the way it's supposed to, and you figure out a way to do that.
Right.
That's almost like hacking a system.
Like when we jaywalk, because even though it's illegal, kind of thing.
Yeah. It's just quicker. So, or hypothetically, your graduation photos go out and they're wanting to charge you $60 for a digital copy, and you mess with the URLs a little bit and you find the photo
hypothetically
online.
This never
hypothetically
all right.
It's something simple like that. Now, and then also, like, we also have to be hackers at our place. So pen testers, they're hackers. They're hacking into your systems. They're trying to. So there's like white hat. There's there's these different ways.
Like, you might not have a job title, but there are people who have these skills.
We're always like, there's different ways. It's just evolved, right? But now people with malicious intent, and so when they're teaching about hackers, they usually are like, oh, they fall into these like different categories. There's hacktivists, which are doing it for like political reasons or to embarrass someone or whatever. So you hear about Anonymous a lot, and what they'll do is like deface different websites, or they'll leak information and things like that, and they're doing it because they're politically driven. Another one is just like common criminals sorts who are, scam artists, the Nigerian prince, like they're just trying to get money. Like, as there's different forms of like cybersecurity professionals, there's different forms of hackers.
I see what you mean.
Or you may be the sort that's out there developing the malware and you're selling the malware. Or you might be the one who are actually like a part of those APTs. Or you're just someone who having fun. In the early days, it was people who were having fun. So you would get this message like, "Oh, you're hacked." But now it gets further, or it goes to state actors, right? Governments.
So my question is pretty vague. Like,
and how do I feel about them? I do think about it. Like
Is that a fair question for me
to
ask?
It is a fair question, but I'm also an interesting individual. Like, I try, I try to protect people from them, and so, but I also understand, there's people who steal because they're trying to make a living. I can't judge too harshly because it's the world we live in. So it comes down to ethics, really. It's a question of ethics.
Sure. So how do you judge ethics? Like, when you go into cybersecurity, do you have
I want to get my PhD in philosophy and focus on ethics.
Do you have to study that if when you got your degree or when you work in cybersecurity?
That's where I think I want to go with it, because I want to get my PhD. Well, yeah, you do talk a little bit about ethics, because you have to be an ethical person, because they're giving you the keys of the kingdom. So it's like, are you going to be responsible with that? Or are you going to turn around and do something malicious with it? Are you going to build in your own back doors? Like you want it. That's up to you. That's personal. But I believe in acting. Like, there's ethical hackers. There we go. It's actually a term. There's ethical hackers. So we're ethical hackers. Like, I've had people, and it's ridiculous and it's insulting. I've had people who've asked me, like, oh, well, can you hack into this person's like account? And it's like some ex-girlfriend of theirs or something. I'm like, you are a terrible person. Right. And it's like, no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't want to, like, I wouldn't do that. Right. So it's like, at what point are you causing harm? Right. Now, if you're innovative enough and you're finding new ways to do things, and you're creating and there's bug hunts and things like that, like bug bounties out there, and you're actually helping improve systems. You're like, hey, you have this vulnerability, and you're doing things like that. That's sorry, that is rad. Like, that's really cool. Like, yeah. Good for you. Keep on doing what you're doing. Enjoy yourself. There's tools out there. There's like Hack the Box, right?
What's that?
It's an online platform for pen testing. Uh-huh. And it's like, there's all these like boxes, which are like machines. Like, it's all virtual, but you're like trying to like access these things, and you're like capturing a flag, which a flag is usually like some sort of code. Okay. And even to get an account, you have to like hack to get an invite.
Can high school kids do this, or kids?
Yeah, and online, like there's so many guides. Like, you can Google is always your friend.
Okay.
The first, like, a lot of them are also online, so you can follow them and like be like, oh, and then you learn so much. And also, if you have no experience, you can use that as experience to get jobs in the industry. Like, there's some managers who like to see that stuff and be like, wow, you like doing this. But there's so many different ways to make your way into this industry and do your part, and it requires so much, and not just one person can do it. And a lot of companies only have one person or very small teams, and we're seeing it grow more and more. And it's funny, it's usually after a breach they realize they needed it. More and more companies are realizing it. So we're going to continue to see it grow, but we still have the problem that there's still not enough talent out there.
You work with several organizations. One of them is to promote women in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
So what is that, and why?
Women in cybersecurity at the University of Houston, S4E8. It is actually in its first year. Oh. It was founded by a few of my peers through my master's. Great people. I love the class of 2018. And I was invited to start. So I started off as the founding PR officer. And so we really built up this organization, and we helped it grow. And then I graduated, and I then transferred over, and we've created a board to help with the strategic vision. So I'm also the founding chair. So it's been so exciting. And really what I love about WESIS and why it's so great, it is a form of a gift, right? Because you still have to fight, in the industry as a woman to get your space, to be heard, to not be siloed into just soft-skilled kind of work, but also to get your technical work. It's still a problem that's out there, but we're not shy. And so it's been great. And what's awesome is like, it's given this opportunity for us women, and we also have a male officer, but people to learn about cybersecurity. We have had different talks. We've had discussions on the soft skills you require. We've had technical workshops. Also, the ones who are involved in it, they're getting valuable like leadership experience. And what I find is like women as leaders, sometimes it's hard to find a place that you'll be like fostered, that leadership will be fostered. A lot of times strong women in the industry, sometimes, we still hit those barriers, and sometimes people get intimidated by a strong woman, and where maybe a man would be fostered, a woman would be called bossy, or pushy or something like that. Like there's always a negative connotation to women leadership. It still exists. So we're fighting against that. There's such low numbers. It's like between 11, like a long-standing statistic out there was like 11%, but like it has
graduates
grown.
or working professionals or
women in cybersecurity.
Okay, yeah, that's
make
lower
up
than
11% to like 22%, like around like.
Wow.
But for sure, less than 30% of the industry is women. A lot of companies out there have set goals to have like their workforce like 25-50% of women by X amount of time, but it's still a fight. And so this is a place where we can fight for that. It's a place where we can take that vision, create a network, and it's for everyone. It's a professional organization, but it's also a place where we can take our ideas and work together and make them grow. So like the young woman who followed in my footsteps in the PR position, she has been doing such great work, and it's now allowed me an opportunity to now mentor. So I'm able to help her and nurture her development, which I really want to do. And then I have so many goals for this organization. I was lucky enough that a lot of my education was funded. And I was raised to pay things forward. So one of the things I also love about WESIS is that now we have the power to create our own scholarship funds if we want to, and create scholarships, and also help support like women in the industry, and like giving scholarships so education can continue. It gives us power. It's very empowering. It gives us opportunities to work in our leadership in a safe environment, you get to celebrate with other people your achievements, and that it creates a sense of community, and it's really great. And then also you always have people. It's like if you're looking for jobs, and it helps with that, and it creates connections. And when it comes to looking for jobs, these type of organizations are so valuable. Like the job I found through another organization, but going to meetups and being a part of the community. And I know like with the work I've also done with Houston SecCon, like if I really needed a position, I know there's people I could turn to and be like, hey, and they would be like, yeah, because we know your work ethic. We know like you create quality work. So this is a place to be able to do that, but also promote a cause that I feel so strongly about. And every time I go through something that women have to go through all the time, that's really frustrating and tiring, I realize this is why I fight for this. I go through the hard things now, so the women who follow after me, the people who follow after me don't have to. It's sometimes a struggle, it's sometimes hard, but it's what we do to make the world a better place. Humans, one of the things that we get and how we're all different is also that we all have different perspectives. So we can all look at a situation and a problem differently and come up with different ideas. And so when we work together, that's when it's beautiful and where we really develop the best ideas. now, I know you mentioned you wanted to hear about my learning
Well,
disabilities. I love talking about it, but
sure, because we didn't record any of that earlier, but we were talking before. No, that's cool. So it's like it's just all of a sudden.
Out there.
No, but we were talking earlier,
Yeah.
and people listening wouldn't know this, but you're a working professional now in cybersecurity. But you talked about how you were diagnosed with dyslexia.
Oh yeah, so I have dyslexia and Erlen syndrome.
Okay,
this is the start. Yeah, so those are like I found out, I want to say in 5th grade. My mother, she had to fight my whole, like all throughout elementary, because both of those are very genetic, and she knew my biological dad had dyslexia. So, and I had signs. Yeah. So she fought with so many of my professors.
Was this in Texas or okay?
Oh, not professors. See, I've been in university too long. I call all teachers professors. No, so she really struggled until she met my 5th grade teacher. She was a big advocate for a lot of students. And she helped a lot of students because she would see the signs, like simply just how you hold your pencil can be a sign. And she was very aware of it, and she would really fight for us kids to get tested because accommodations can make a world of difference. So yeah, and I found out I had Erlen syndrome, which runs on my mom's side. So most of my family on my mom's side, pretty sure, has it. So that's like it's another perceptual disorder, but like you perceive a lot of light, and ways that it affects learning is because with reading, when you're reading a book, a lot of times like the background's more prominent than the letters, so you'll start seeing the snakes in the lines. So if you're looking at a page of words, all of the gaps in between the words, that's what you're seeing more than just the words. So you have that. And then with dyslexia, then you get the moving of the letters and all of that. Anyway,
it wasn't a fun time last year.
Yeah, like it was very interesting. I had to work really hard at my reading and writing through school. I was like naturally gifted in math and science, so that was always very easy for me. But like with writing, it was hard. Like I still can't spell. I'm so thankful for autocorrect and our being in this age, else I would be it would be bad. Now I love writing. Because I had to work at it so hard, it became something I became really good at, and I grew to love. Like I actually write in my free time. Like I wrote a thesis. I love when I get to write. Yeah, so it's, so you really can do anything, and especially with dyslexia, like and I wanted to be an astrophysicist once. I've wanted to do everything. So Einstein was a big model for me in that sense, because he was also dyslexic. And so it's like, it doesn't, for me, because they're like changes in the brain, I literally perceive the world differently. I literally see things differently. My brain has to process, like, I think this is how I read it once. Like everything that my eyes are taking in, my mind can't fully process it all, so it has to prioritize. And so it's like I just see things differently. Yeah. I literally do. So then you have a different perspective, and like we're all different, and and so I love it. Like I wouldn't want to be different. It would be interesting to be, but then I was born this way, and so I love it. And though it's hard sometimes for kids, I know I still graduated top 10% of my class, and I had to fight with my teachers to get my accommodations. And I still chose not to go forward with accommodations in university, which, sometimes it was hard. And you have to remind yourself, you have this. So maybe this is a little harder right now, but you're still a rock star and you'll still get through it. So for those kids, it is difficult. It does mean you're different, but there's nothing wrong with being different. That's what I learned. It didn't stop
you from doing these different things?
And the great thing, no. It just provided, like I said, I like challenges, and it's a lot of time has allowed me to see things differently, or I think I've been able to see things differently. And it's just because like we live in a world that like if everyone like things would be different. There would be like more audiobooks and things like that, and you would just learn differently. Like, but I'm also a daughter of a teacher, and so I, you know, and my mom, I'm so thankful to her because she knew everyone learns differently, and she raised 2 kids with learning disabilities, myself and my brother. My brother also has Erland syndrome, and so yeah, it definitely. Yeah, but it's nothing to think is bad.
Sure.
But I know things have changed. There are more teachers who are open to it, and I've had to change schedules though. I've sometimes had teachers that are notoriously known for not providing accommodations, and I've had to change my educational plans for it, which is upsetting that a student would have to do that. But times are changing, and people are becoming more aware of it. Like I said, Einstein was also dyslexic. There's so many people who are dyslexic. And so it's really, we're not that different.
I wonder if the struggle of being the minority amongst people who might not understand you, if that changes your level of empathy, I guess. And I'm wondering if that is playing into why you want to be
I have a
people.
strong sense of empathy.
But that could just be how it would be anyway.
Yeah. That's one thing. It's about compassion, right? Empathy is also about having compassion and understand. And a key to compassion is understanding we're not alone. We're all going through it. Suffering, which sometimes it leads to, like, it gives you a stomach ache and headaches to read. Yeah, it's a form of suffering sometimes, especially if you're having to study long, long hours. I remember when I did honors humanities, I had to read a book lesson every 2 weeks, and it was thick, like...
That gives me headaches.
It was antiquity philosophy. There would be paragraphs from the bottom of the page at the top of the page. I couldn't make out a single word.
Your favorite class, I'm sure. Yeah.
I couldn't make out a single word. I still pulled an A and a B out of it. Like, it... You don't want to compare yourself to other people. That never helps. But no, like, your own achievements are your own still, and they're just as glorious. What's beautiful about everything is that if we can accept that we're all different and take that to strengthen us, because then, like I said about perspective and approaching these problems and having multiple choices to choose from, that's where we get the strength in our diversity. So, yeah.
All right. No, that answers the question. Thank you. All right, we've been going a while.
Yeah, that was fun.
You want to say who you are one more time?
So this was Nicole Bashang.
Cybersecurity expert in Houston.
Yeah, in Houston. Human being, always.
That's a perfect title.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Links to different topics, tools, and news that Nicole mentioned today are in this episode's show notes. Thank you not only to Nicole Bashang, but also thanks to the donors to this show on Patreon who make the podcast possible. The K-12 Engineering Education Podcast is a production of Pios Labs, and if you want to help support Pios Labs, point your browser to patreon.com/Pios Labs, or find this link and more at the show website, newly updated, at k12engineering.net. Check out the new website. That address again is k12engineering.net. Thanks, listeners. Tune in next time.